Welcome back to the channel. My name is Tronage, and today we're going to be talking about the Mobula7, even though this looks like just a yellow wrapped box, but it just came from China. We're going to crack this open, see what's inside, and we'll go over it. Want to see? Stick around. It seems like it was just last week that I was posting the videos on the Beta75X and the 65X crafts. And that's probably because it was about a week or so ago that I posted those videos. But a lot of people were saying to check out the Mobula7, or that they have a Mobula7 on order, or they're getting the Mobula7, or they have it. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of buzz about this Mobula7. Let me check it out. So here it is, fresh from China in this signature yellow tape package where every single square inch is covered in this wonderful yellow tape, which I don't understand why everything from China comes with this yellow tape. It's like they don't have clear tape there or something. If you know why everything from China comes with just yellow tape, leave a comment below. I'm kind of intrigued why about that. And speaking about down below, if you haven't already, you're going to want to hit that subscribe button. While you're at it, hit that bell icon. It'll notify you when I post new videos. It makes finding them just easier. It doesn't cost you a cent to subscribe to my channel, but this way you're in the know the moment new videos come out. And this is what we do. We do some unboxings, we do reviews, we do flights, we do all kinds of stuff relating to drones and quads. So hit that subscribe button. Now, let's get to this. I don't even know how to approach this really. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring you in close because I don't know if this is a box. I don't know if what's inside here. So bring you in, we'll cut it open, we'll check it out, we'll unbox it, and I'll give you my initial impressions on this. All right, so here we go. We got our package here, and I'm not quite sure how to approach this, so I'm just going to start cutting and hope for the best. So let's see. Okay. So what we have here is what seems to be the Mobula6/7 by Happymodel, and the box is a little smushed up, but hopefully that didn't affect anything inside. And then I also ordered a couple little spare parts, and I'm going to guess that's what's in this other smushed up, smashed up box. But that's what you get when you order stuff from China. So let's go for the big box first. Opening it up, and here's what's inside. Okay, so inside here we have some documentation, which will be probably how to use it, how to put it together, or something along those lines. If you're interested, here's that information. We have 2 sets of spare props, which is always a great thing to get some spare props. So we have 2 sets of those. We have some more documentation, which looks like it's about how to set up in Betaflight. And then the other side. And then we get the meat and the potatoes. So let's go for these little spare part section first. We have yet another set of spare parts, which is pretty cool. We have now another set of black props with a little screwdriver tool. We have a prop removal tool, and we have some spare screws and stuff that I'm guessing holds some things together. And we also have, what is that little guy? Is that a bind plug or something? What is this guy? I think it might be a bind plug for a little Spectrum, maybe? I don't know. Oh, I know what this is for, I believe, but we'll get to what this is. But I think I know exactly what that is. That's so if you're going to use it in 1S instead of 2S. Clever. All right, so we also have 2 little batteries here. They're 250 milliamp hour, 30/60C, high volt packs. There's 2 of these in the package. And then I opted for the kit that was a little cheaper with just a little simple charger, USB on one side, you plug your battery in the other, off you go. Nothing fancy to be seen here. And now, the unit itself, which looks to be in good condition, even though the box was a little smooshed. Yeah, all seems to be well and good. Oh, and it has 2 more batteries, same style on here. So the way these go on here, they have this little 3D printed part. So the one goes in on the top, and then the one goes in on the bottom, and then the one on the bottom is essentially holding this little ring in place, so that you can use these 2 1S packs style instead of the larger 2S style. So it's kind of a neat way of addressing it. I kind of like the way the BetaFPV one has like 2 separate channels for this on the 65S, and the 75S has just a bigger channel that you can put 2 of them side by side like this, or use a real 2S pack. So this is kind of cool, the flexibility though that it offers. And now I mentioned earlier about this little weird part. It looks just like a little wire and a plug on the end of it, and what this is for. And what this is for is when you hook this up, let's say you only want to fly 1S, you don't want to fly 2S. Well, if you're only going to be flying 1S and you only put 1 battery on here, the current's not going to flow. This is basically a jumper. So if you want to plug, you can plug this into one of these battery slots like that, and then just use a 1S pack on this other one, and this will jump the power so you can fly this with 1S pack instead of using a 2S, 2 1S packs. So that's pretty nifty that they included that. So you have that flexibility to fly with either a 1 or 2S style. Hard to get out though, without pulling on the wire, and I don't want to pull on the wires. Okay, so one word of note, if you are going to use this, it's not something you're going to pop in and out, because it's actually really difficult to pull this out. Now, obviously, you probably could have pulled it out easier if I just grabbed these wires and tugged, but I don't like pulling plugs out by the wire, so I want to grab it by the plug, and since there's like not much to grab onto, it was a little difficult to pull out, so might need like needle nose pliers or something for that. Let's bring in my little smashed box here that I got, that's supposedly, I think, some spare parts, and let's see what we got in here. Ooh. Okay, so we got some more props. Got 10 pairs, all different colors. Pinks, blues, yellows, reds, whites. Basically just wanted to have a whole variety of colors. Especially, I really just wanted the pink ones, to be honest with you. The pink was where it's at. But yeah, so picked those up. And I picked up a couple frames, because apparently a lot of people have been crashing this thing, and frames have been cracking. So I figured I'd pick up a couple frames so I'd have them on hand, so when things go wrong, I got some frames to work with. All right, and while we're at it, let's get a quick weight on this scale. Turn it on, zero it out. 29 grams, plus you're going to be flying it with 2 1S packs, so we'll throw those on as well. 42 grams all in. And if you fly 1 pack and you have your little plug on, 36 grams all in. Not too shabby. All right, the Mobula7, man. This thing, I am having, I don't know what it is about this guy, and I kind of went into this not expecting to like it as much as I did, and I do like it now, having flown it. And I can definitely see what all the hype is about, because I kind of think what this does is this accomplishes sort of the Goldilocks of things. And I'll explain what I mean. First, let's talk about specs, because that's kind of where an important factor in our hobby, obviously. Size-wise, comparing it to the BetaFPV products, we have the Beta75X here. And size-wise, it's just a smidge smaller. This is 75, this is 70. hence where the 7 comes from in the Mobula name. Mobula7 meaning 70. So it's a tiny bit smaller, but it runs the exact same size props. Everything's about the same size on it. It kind of looks almost like the same class, if you will. However, this one is running a 802 motor. It's a small motor. This is running an 1103 motor, so it's a much bigger motor. So even though these look the same, this has got way more authority, way more oomph to it than this one does, okay? Keep that in mind. Now comparing it to the Beta65X. These have the same motor in them. They both run the 802 motor. The only difference is the Mobula is running at 16,000 kV, and this is running at 17,500 kV, which makes sense. Smaller prop, higher kV. Larger prop, lower kV. Sort of the formula that we talked about when we were talking about motor theory. If you want to check that video up ahead, you can check that out. But, so that makes a lot of sense. But you're thinking to yourself, well, this guy's running the small guy's motors. Well, why do I want the big one? Let me break it down to you like this. You need to make sure that the equipment that you're flying matches what you intend to do. Otherwise, you won't have a good time doing it. And what I mean by that is, just imagine in your head, you could take a 5-inch quad and attempt to fly it indoors. But it would be way too overpowered and pretty terrifying to begin with. But it has the biggest, the baddest, the most power. But that's not what you need indoors. If you want to fly indoors and you want to hit gaps and you want to hit gates and you want to do exploring or whatever, you need something that's stable, zippy, if you will, and has just a lot of different qualities. And I think that's what the Mobula brings to the table, because it doesn't put the biggest motors on it like the 75X has on it, but it doesn't put the smallest wheelbase like the 65X. So it has a bigger wheelbase, so you get some stability from there. You have bigger props than the 65X, so you get more authority grabbing the air with the bigger prop. But it's still a smaller prop, so you're not getting out of control really fast. Coupled with that, you have the adjustable camera angle, which is a really important for what I'm trying to explain, because you can adjust how fast or aggressive you want to be just by changing your camera angle. If you're not aware, if you have a very shallow camera angle, then you don't have to tip the quad much to see forward to move forward. So you'll just kind of drift around and go real nice and slow and chill. If you tip your camera angle way up to a steeper angle, then to see forward you have to tip at a more steep angle, which will then make you fly faster in that direction. By being able to adjust your camera angle, it also means that you can adjust it to what you want to do. If you just want to explore and maybe, bug the dog or, bug your girlfriend or whatever, you can make the camera angle very shallow and just do like exploring flying around. Or if you want to try to do laps and races and hit gates and stuff like that, you can tip it up a little bit and you can try to go faster. So the fact that it has that kind of flexibility on that, I think, is huge. And I think that's why it kind of hits that Goldilocks point, because in all honesty, this is, I feel, you need a little bit of experience to handle these motors on this size of a thing. I mean, it's doable. I do it. I have a blast flying this little guy too. It's just, it's a mindset, because you're so tiny that you think you're flying a tiny whoop, but these motors are so freaking powerful for the power to weight ratio that you have to be very careful how you fly. Otherwise, you go fast, quick with them on here. And this guy, wow. Like, you can get out of control really fast with this indoors, unless you have really Jedi reflexes or more skill than I do, at least. So this, I feel, is like a little bit indoors, but mostly more of an outdoor, but keep it in your pocket and just go and fly kind of a craft. But this one is sort of like that middle ground, that Goldilocks, that not too much power, but not too little power, and just the right amount. Like, I don't know. There's a lot about this quad that I really like. And I really, out of the three of these, I think I had the most fun flying this one, to be completely honest with you. However, as with life, there's never going to be that perfect thing. There are going to be some downsides to it, and I'm going to talk about the things I don't like about it. What I don't like about it is, first of all, this frame. If we compare the two frames here, I'll put them up here so you can see. You can see on the 75X, there's 2, 4, 6 prongs holding on the motor. On the Mobula7, there's only 4 prongs that hold on the motor. So in my opinion, 6 prongs is stronger than 4 prongs, or spokes if you want to call them spokes. So I feel like after some crashes, and I have been hearing reports of that, after repeated crashes, the frame does break. I mean, I did have extra frames here, so in case that happened, I had them on hand. I haven't broke one yet, but I feel like if something's going to break, it's, you know, just like with a tiny whoop, the thing that breaks first on your frame are the spokes on the motors. It religiously has always been the case, and I see that being no different with these frames. It's either going to break right where the spoke connects to the ring or where the spoke connects to where the motor is mounted. That's going to be your impact points, and that's going to be what's going to break first mostly, or it may break the actual ring itself, but being that this is a thinner point, that's usually what snaps. So I feel like this is a little bit more delicate of a frame. The other thing I don't like about it is it's running F3 processor. The flight controller on here is an F3 processor. The flight controller on both of these BetaFPV products, they are an F4 processor, and I'm basically everything I'm flying now is F4 because they can handle an 8 kilohertz gyro and PID loop and still have the processing, idle processing is like at like 8% sitting on the desk. This one, in the manual, it says to set the gyro to 8 kilohertz and your PID loop to 2 kilohertz. And even with those settings sitting here on the table, it was at like 45 or 48% sitting on the table here. On an F3 processor, I'm more comfortable having it sitting on the table at about a 20% load, not at a 45% load. So, you know, time will tell how that pans out, but I'm not so thrilled that this is an F3 processor, not an F4. And the other thing about the flight controller, which is kind of odd, is that it's currently running Betaflight 4.0.0 from October 2018. And as you know, we're not up to Betaflight 4.0.0. So therefore, that usually tells me as a red flag, this has some sort of custom firmware installed on it. That makes me not want to update the firmware because once I write over that firmware, it's gone and I don't have a way to get it back. And I've tried to look online for the Happymodel, Mobula7 firmware, whatever, because a lot of places have their own custom firmwares not within Betaflight. And I couldn't find any information about the firmware. So I've yet to upgrade the firmware on this, which I would like to, but I can't. And I don't know if I should or not. So if you know, comment below, let me know where to get the firmware for this, or if it's okay to flash the firmware with the upgraded firmware. But when I see a thing like that, it makes me think it's a custom firmware and I'm not going to flash it right away. The other thing I didn't like about it also with the flight controller is that it's configured for props in. So meaning the props are going to spin towards into the camera and into the tail. I prefer to fly props out. And I couldn't get them to reverse because I can't connect to this with BL Heli Suite or the BL Heli configurator. When I try to, it doesn't recognize what it is and it kind of disconnects from it. So I can't go into the ESC and essentially reverse the motor direction. So the only real way I see to be able to run props out on this guy is that you'll have to go in, unplug these motors and swap 2 wires, because this is just like any standard ESC motor combination like this. If you want to reverse the motor direction, you can either do it in your ESC configurator, or all you gotta do is take any 2 of the 3 wires and switch them. So whichever they are plugged in, you just reverse them, and that will cause the motor to spin the other direction. So you could go in here, pull out these plugs, swap the pins around and put them back in, but that's a lot of work to go through when you could just flip a switch on in a piece of software. So I'm a little unfortunate and not sure why I can't go in there and edit to be able to reverse my motor direction. So for now, I'm just going to leave it as props in and I'm going to leave with the current firmware on it. But if you know any information about being able to reverse these prop directions or about the firmware for the Mobula 7, please comment below. I'll be very happy to hear from you. The other thing I don't like about this is the antenna situation on this for the receiver. And I'll show you, bring it up close here so you can see. This little wire here is your antenna for the receiver. And there's really nowhere good to put it, nowhere good to mount it, so I just kind of been letting it dangle. But, you know, maybe I'll glue it to the frame or something. But then when you glue it to the frame, then if you break the frame, you have to, you know, it causes a problem. I don't like to, like, permanently mount something like that. So there's really no good spot to stick it. It just kind of sticks out the bottom. And I'm also worried after repeated crashes, it may actually break off or something because, you know, you bend a wire back and forth a couple times, it'll eventually snap off and I'll have to fix it. So I'm not so thrilled with the way they did the antenna on this. Both of these have a separate receiver in them that has antennas that are on an IPX connector. So if something happens to the antenna, it gets caught in the props and chops up, I can just snap a new one on. This one's just a little piece of wire coming out of the circuit board. I just actually had a moment of revelation of how I think I can how I can mount this little antenna so it's a little more secure. Alright, so what I'm going to be doing here to the Mobula 7, just spur of the moment completely, is very similar to what I did on my 65X, where I just used this old zip tie and heat shrink technique. I think I'm going to do that same thing on here. So you can see what I did there now. I put a little zip tie on there and a little bit of shrink tubing. And by doing that, now that antenna is locked into a position, it won't go anywhere. It stays nice and straight, and I don't have to worry about it jiggling around and breaking off. So that actually is a little itty bitty mod I just figured out live while we're chatting here. But I'm liking that. So that kind of fixes one of my cons. Although I do feel like you'll get much better reception out of, you know, these giant antennas that are on these guys versus this little piece of wire sticking out of here. But in all honesty, we're flying it around a room. We don't really need huge reception. What I do like is that the Mobula does have a actual beeper inside instead of both of these. I'm required to use my motor tone-ups as my beeper. And the other thing is that the frame, the way you have to put the batteries in it is just not as well refined as the other BetaFPV products. And I'll show you what I mean. Grab some batteries here. So for the Mobula 7, the way you have to use this little 3D printed square thing here. And you stick it in the middle here like this. Like that. Okay. And then you have to take one battery and you thread it through the frame and that square. Like that. And then your second battery, you got to come in here and get it into that square like that. And it kind of wedges them all in and off you go. And that's how you have to have your batteries mounted. I don't see how you'd be able to use this with one battery as like a 1S pack because it really won't stay in there. It'll fall right out. So I don't know how you would fly it as a 1S if you wanted to really tone it back to a 1S pack. I mean, you can fly it as 1S, but I don't know how you would do that because the pack will fall right out. On the BetaFPV products, on the 65X, for their two batteries, you can see it has a separate channel for each one. They're both an individual channel that they're in. So you can take one out. This other one doesn't fall out. It's a separate channel for each battery that's in there. So it's just a much more refined way of doing it. For the 75X, they have a big channel for their big 2S pack. And you can see I can pop in this 2S pack here, and it sits in there fine. So there's the 2S pack in its channel. But if you wanted to run two 1S packs, you can do that as well. You just stick them in sideways. So now I have two 1S packs stuck in there, and they don't fall out either. And yes, I did make a little XT30 to 2 JSTPH connector for exactly doing that exact thing with this quad. So I feel like those you don't need a little 3D printed part, and you can just stick them in there and off you go. This one I feel is kind of more of an afterthought to the frame, to being using these two packs as such. Does it work? Absolutely it works. But is it effective? We'll see. But overall, I have to say, out of the three of these, I think I'm liking this one the best just for flying around indoors. I can tell you outdoors, I'm almost guaranteed going to be liking these a little bit better for outdoor action. But for the indoor, tiny whoop type, racing around, hitting gates, and that type of thing, I'm thinking the Mobula7 is where it's at. Because I gotta say, it's just really, despite its shortcomings with the frame and the flight controller and everything, I really had a good time flying it, and I really just enjoyed it. So I kind of expected to not like it so much, but I did like it. I'll be putting links to everything that I've shown you today. I'll be putting links for the Mobula. I'll also throw in some links for the BetaFPV products in case you want to check those out. I'm even going to be putting a link to my antenna mod if you want to pick one of those up. They are affiliate links, and I appreciate you using those if you do decide to make a purchase. It's one really great way that you're able to help support the channel and help me bring new content and new videos to you guys. So overall, I am loving the Mobula7. It flies great indoors. I'm having the most fun out of all of these flying this one, and I can see why. It's just because it's sort of like a great combination of size to motor to prop ratio type things. And what I do want to do is I do want to take it outdoors. So once I get a nice day out here, I am going to take all three of these out, the BetaFPV 65X, the 75X, and now the Mobula7. I'm going to take all three of them out there and just put them through their paces, because testing indoors, I feel, doesn't really give you as much data as possible because you are constrained to the confines of, you know, walls and a ceiling. But when you bring things outdoors, you can really push it to its limits and see what it's capable of. And that'll really show where the limitations of these quads lie. Testing them where I can just push them to the limits and run them at max throttle and run them at max tilt, and that will be an upcoming video. So if you haven't already, make sure you slam that subscribe button, hit the bell while you're at it. That way you are notified when that video will be dropped. All right. So as always, my name is Tronage. Fly strong.